Yeah, hello and welcome to this After Effects tutorial for mamoworld.com. My name is Matthias, and in this tutorial I show you how to create the effect that you have just seen. In principle, to be honest, when I get up in the morning, I more or less automatically look almost already like that, yeah? But as you can imagine, there are some little manipulations involved that sell the effect even better. Yeah, and these are the ones I'm going to show you. So what we are going to do first is to track the shot in Mocha. I also show you some details here, like for example, verifying whether your track looks good or not, and what to do in case that it does not yet look good. In the second step, we are going to enlarge the mouse. This involves creating a stabilized pre-comp using Mocha import and also some rotoscoping. In the third part, we modify the skin using the cell pattern effect. We also use color keying to isolate the skin areas and do some general color correction. But now, let's start with the first part, tracking in Mocha. Okay, so here we are now in Mocha, where we want to track our face, and the first thing I want to do is to convert our clip here into a format that is supported by all versions of Mocha. So this file that you can download is an MP4 file, which causes problem in some versions. So what you do in this case is you take the Adobe Media Encoder, drag this file in, choose as format that you want to export to this TIFF format here. And here in the options, you go to, and the video, sorry, this is a German version actually, and I don't really know how to switch this for the media encoder, but anyway, I think you will be able to follow. So you have to enable here to export as a sequence. Otherwise, it does not export an entire sequence of TIFF images, but just a single image. I click on OK, and now choose here the folder in which it should export. I create a new subfolder here called TIFF sequence and just store it there and hit on render or start render queue. And you see that immediately it starts rendering here and creates here a folder containing lots of TIFF images of our clip. Okay, now we switch to Mocha and go to File, New Project. Actually, I'm using here Mocha for CS5, and if you have another version of Mocha, you can also use it. Maybe the interface looks a little bit different because it improved a bit over time. Okay, I choose here the clip I want to import. Here in the TIFF sequences, I just choose the first TIFF image, not all of them or so, but only the first one, and then Mocha automatically recognizes that it's a sequence of 200 TIFF images numbered from 0 to 100 to 99, and make sure that you have the correct frame rate of 25 frames per second. Okay, then we click on OK, and we have here our clip and can take a look at it. What we now want to track is the basic movement of the face. So when I turn here to the side, and so all of this should be tracked. What we do not want to track is all this opening and closing of the mouse all the time. So this will rather irritate Mocha, and therefore what we are going to track by such an X-spline that we create with this tool here is just the upper part of the face, because this is rather constant and not moving in itself. Yeah. So I just roughly mark here this area and right-click to stop drawing the mask. And now we have here a mask around this part of the face, which is rather stable. Yeah, here we have all this movement of the mouse, and this part is stable and has also lots of contrast. So here, this border between the skin and the hair and the eyes and the nose are all nice features that we want to track. Then make sure that you have here everything enabled except for perspective. This is something with some trial and error. So most of the time this works best. Sometimes it works better to enable perspective. So you can try what works better. And then we click here on track forward. So now the track is finished, and the next thing you should always do in Mocha is to verify whether your track is good. And for this, you can enable here this surface, which is this blue rectangle here, and see whether this stays more or less at the same place, yeah, which looks more or less good now. And the second thing that you can enable is here a grid. And with this, you see even more precise whether it's nicely following the head and turning with it and so on, or whether it's not looking that nice. This is basically the plane that Mocha has detected during the track. And the only thing I'm not 100% satisfied with is that at the end, the grid here seems rather to be sheared here, to be turned to the right, whereas here it's rather not turned like this to the right, and the head seems to be here and here in more or less the same position. So this is somehow a tracking error, that it has moved here like this to the right. And if you look carefully here, the track still looks good. And now if you turn again here, after this turn, somehow it seems to get that movement, or to be sheared like this here to the right. And many people, I think, have the impression that when you track with Mocha, either it works great or it doesn't work, and if it doesn't work, or if it has some mistakes, there is not much you can do about it. So this is not right at all. One thing that you can, for example, do is this adjust track thing here, but I do not want to show this here. What I just want to do is to retrack a part. Yeah, often it works to just track the problematic part a second time. So I think here something went wrong a bit, and the tracker lost a bit of the details. And I think the problem here was that, yeah, the turn here is so much that the right part, or from our point of view, the right part of the face is completely hidden. Yeah, here it's not visible anymore. And Mocha tries to track this, and since it completely disappeared, it's irritated by that. So what we want to do is to retrack just this last part here, and do not use this right part also as a tracking area. So we just modify it here, change our mask, and now we only use this part of the face for this part of the track, since the other part disappears anyway, so we do not want to irritate Mocha. I just click here to continue tracking, so it's no problem to just track a part a second time. So Mocha just integrates this in the existing track, and now we can again enable here our surface in our grid, and I think this already looks much better than before. Yeah, so now the track looks quite good in my eyes. Okay, the next thing, or another thing that you can always do to verify whether your track is good, is to go here to Insert Clip and choose some image, for example this Mocha logo file. Let me just deactivate here this grid. And now you can also take here these edges of the surface and make them a bit larger. Yeah. And now we can verify when we play back the clip that this Mocha logo nicely moves with the clip. And you can see that this looks like a quite good track. And you can also see that although, yeah, the face here is not really a plane, it could be tracked effortless with this planar tracker Mocha. We also see that, yeah, maybe here it's unnaturally growing somehow, this image, yeah, but we will see that these details are not so relevant for the manipulations that we want to do later. So we just need to capture the basic movement, which, yeah, is basically nicely done with this. The last thing we need to do is to set our surface correctly. I select here the layer again and deactivate here the logo image, and now we need to set this blue surface area to the area that we later want to have in our stabilized pre-com that we create with Mocha import. So this is like the part of the image that we later want to look at when we do our manipulations, or from which we will create or use the corner pin. And so I roughly do it such that it has the 16:9 format of our clip and contains here, more or less the face, so the part that we are interested in, that we want to manipulate. Okay, so now we go to export tracking data. For this you have to make sure that you have enabled your layer here. If I deselect the layer, then you can see you cannot export anything. So you have to click here on the layer and then on export tracking data. And the format that we want to export is this After Effects corner pin, for which it is written that it supports Mocha import. Yeah, we want to use the mamoworld tool Mocha import, so you need to choose this format. If you don't have CS5 but use the CS4 tracker, then you don't have this option here. But in CS4 you only have one version of corner pin data, and this version of corner pin data works fine. So short message, whenever you have here something written with Mocha import, use this one. If you do not have this, just use the corner pin format that you have. Then we click on save, or actually I have already saved this in a previous run, so I will not overwrite it. But anyway, just save it to a file, and now let's switch to After Effects. Okay, so here we are now in After Effects, and I have already imported our background plate footage, and I drag it here into a new composition and call this new composition main comp. And in this main comp, we want now to apply to our footage as a track we did, and we use for this Mocha import. And in Mocha import, I go here to load tracking data and choose our tracks that we made before in Mocha, click OK, and verify that here everything is correct. So we have 200 frames of corner pin data and a frame rate of 25. And the clip here starts actually at the beginning of the composition. So we hit OK, and now we choose here that we want to create an undistorted and stabilized pre-comp. And if you have a red giant warp, you can actually also choose this option here, create undistorted and stabilized pre-comp with red giant warp. But if you don't have this plugin, you can use this option that I'm also going to use now. And then we click on the plate footage here and hit apply. Now this takes a moment to compute, and what Mocha now does is, or what Mocha import does, is to create a stabilized pre-comp of the corner pin area that we've marked in Mocha. Okay, so now the pre-comp has been created, so we can see that here our plate footage has been replaced by a pre-comp, and that also here in the viewer this is visible. So you can see that now the head is not fully, or only the corner pin area is visible of the head, and it is moving here nicely with our track. And what we now want to do is go back to our project, and you can see that, yeah, what Mocha import created here are two additional compositions. One is this pre-comp, and then there is this undistorted, which is basically a technical thing that you never have to touch. But anyway, what we first are going to do is to again drag this in our main comp to fill in again the remaining missing parts. Yeah. So what we now have is two layers that perfectly line up, where the second one here contains the entire image, and the first one, if I solo it, just contains this corner pin area that we want to manipulate. And to manipulate it, we double click on it, and then we are here in this pre-comp. You can see that in this pre-comp, the head is now nicely stabilized. And in particular, you can see that the mouse here is almost not moving. Yeah, of course it is deforming because there are quite some perspective changes going on, but it stays more or less at the same place. And what we want to do now is to mask out this mouse and make it bigger. And for this, I'm going to select this layer here and hit Ctrl D to duplicate it, rename it to mouse, and then rotoscope it. So yeah, rotoscoping sounds like quite a bit of work, and it is actually. So I select here the pen tool, make sure that I have Roto Bezier enabled, because that makes the rotoscoping much easier, and then I draw here a mask around my mouse. And if I solo the layer, you can see now that now here we just have the mouse and nothing else. And I hit MF to reveal the mask's feather and feather it a bit. Yeah, maybe like this. Let me just deactivate here the mask's visibility. So like this, that we roughly have the mouse. And the point is now, okay, this mask does not follow perfectly to our head here. Yeah, it's to the mouse. It stays more or less at this position, but not exactly. But to just get an idea of what we finally want to have, I will now, before I do the perfect rotoscoping here, just click on scale and go here to 150%. So scale this mouse up and put it, yeah, maybe around here. Okay, and if we now scroll through the composition, you can see that to a large extent it already looks quite nice. Here, yeah, the wrong part of the mouse is rotoscoped. So if we make the mask again visible, you can see that, yeah, this part of the mouse is just lost. But anyway, if we go here to the main comp, yeah, even without any kind of rotoscoping or so, the result already looks quite nice because our track was so good. So the new or the larger mouse perfectly moves with our face. And you can see here now there are some artifacts, and this is just because the rotoscoping is not perfect. Yeah. So if we go here again to our pre-comp, here you can see that the mouse layer has just here a wrong mask. Yeah. So what we therefore need to do is to really keyframe this mask step by step to get rid of these artifacts, and you can do this as precise as you want depending on how high quality your result should be. But in principle, you just go here to mask pass and then move through the pass and say, okay, at this point I need to adjust it because the mouse here is just that small, and then you go a few frames further and again enlarge it, and so on. So I do not want to do all of this here in the tutorial, so let's therefore just fast forward until the step where I've finished the rotoscoping of the mouse. Okay, now I have rotoscoped here the mouse. You can see that also I temporarily again scaled it down to 100% to make this rotoscoping easier, but now I have here this nicely animated mask with a lot of keyframes. Again, you don't have to make it that precise, but the result looks nicer, better if you have it precisely keyframed. Anyway, so now I again scale it up. So hit S to reveal the scale, go to 150% and place it, yeah, here in the middle. And now, as the track might not be 100% perfect, it might be that we need to adjust the position of the mouse over time a bit. So I think here the mouse looks quite nice like this. If we go through, we can also verify here in the main comp how it's looking there. Yeah, very nice, seems to be attached quite well to the face. Okay, at this point I feel like the teeth are a little bit too much here to the left. Yeah, so the mouse should be here more oriented to the right. So let's go here to the last position where it was more or less okay. So here it looked okay. So let's put at this point for the position a keyframe. And now in this turn, let's say here, the mouse should rather be positioned like this. And in the total movement, you see that, yeah, the correction we do goes more or less unnoticed. So we can have here another, oops, now I accidentally moved the background plate, which I of course didn't want. So let's lock this one here, and maybe we can correct it here a bit. This is because when you turn so much, maybe the track is not 100% perfect. And then, of course, here we again need to compensate and move back in this direction. Like this. See here, it now looks good everywhere. Okay, and maybe at this point also our mask is not 100% perfect. So we can move it here a bit tighter. And here also the face should be more placed like this. And here again our rotoscoping is not tight, so we can move here our mask a bit. So you can see I also haven't worked perfect with this. So you can always refine, go back, reveal here your mask, and update your keyframes such that it looks better. Yeah. Okay, so this looks quite good. So let's look at a preview of the main comp. You can see how nice the new or enlarged mouse is moving with our face, all just because of this Mocha track. And the only thing that is now missing are these red stripes here on top of the skin that we are going to do now. Okay, and now for these red stripes, we go again into this pre-comp here and create a new layer for these stripes. So we go to Layer, New Solid, and create a white solid that we call red, maybe just red lines or so. And on this we apply an effect, namely the cell pattern effect. I drag it onto this layer, and now we have this nice pattern here. And if we now set the transfer mode from normal to multiply, so it's out of the visibility of the recording here, but anyway, among those options here you find the option multiply, and when you find this, you can see that it that now the cell pattern is nicely blended in front of our face. So the next problem we of course have now is that the cell pattern is now not just in front of the skin, but also here in front of the mouth and in front of the hair and so on. And to get rid of this, we need a matte. And of course, similarly as for the mouse, we could rotoscope this. So this means just draw masks around the skin here and animate this over time. But actually this time we can do it easier because we can just use the color of the skin to pull a matte. And for this, we just duplicate here the background layer. I hit Ctrl D to duplicate it, lock again the original background and call the copy of it matte, or maybe more precise, skin matte. Just we want to have the skin just isolated with it. We push it here on top of our layer stack, and now we apply a color range key filter. With this we just drag it here on our matte, and then this color range filter, you can just use this pipette here to specify a certain color. Here's the color of the skin. And you can see here in the preview and also here that parts of the layer become transparent such that below the other layers, in particular the cell pattern, becomes visible. And then I add some more skin tones, maybe here some skin tone, and then I can play also with the fuzziness. And you can see that now I have a pretty good isolated, just the face, just the skin tones and nothing else. Maybe like this already looks pretty good. And now of course the problem is the mouse and everything we had below is not visible. Or here you see it's not looking nice. So what we do, we actually use this matte here as a track matte. Currently we just have it, if I isolate it, you can see we have just put it on in front of everything else. Now instead we turn it invisible and say for the layer below, namely for those red lines that are currently still black, we say we want to use the layer above as alpha inverted matte, meaning wherever the layer above was transparent, this one is not transparent. So by this we have now nicely this cell pattern only on our skin. If we now take a preview of our main comp, you can see that this cell pattern nicely moves with our track, and that this looks good here in this area and here near the eye and so on, and that of course here in this bottom area it does not look very nice because the mouse is always moving, so it doesn't look very realistic. Let me just turn off the sound here in these areas. So to keep it simple, we just want to have these red lines in these areas where the track is good. If you want to have it also here in this bottom area, what you have to do is to track this lower part of the face and its movement separately, which is, I think, quite tedious. So to keep it simple, we just make the modifications in these areas here. So we go back and draw masks around the areas that we want to maintain. So this is, again, like a artistic decision where you want to have these lines. I just roughly paint here a mask, so this area we want to have our, in this area we want to have our red lines. We can feather the mask a bit, hit MF to reveal the mask feather, and yeah, feather it maybe like this. And then for the eye itself, we do not want to have stripes on there, so I also roughly draw here a mask around the eye and set this to subtract. And oops, I actually subtracted the mouse mask, which is of course nonsense. So here's a second mask from our red lines. I set this one to subtract so that we do not have these patterns on the eye, and again I feather out this mask a bit, maybe like this. Let me just deactivate the visibility. Now you can see that, yeah, in this area we have this nice pattern, and this pattern we are going to adjust now. Yeah, so I go here to the cell pattern effect, and one thing that we can do is we can change the size of these cells. Yeah, can do it, for example, like this, or maybe this is a little bit large, maybe like this. And then we can also define an offset to find a nice part of the pattern that looks nice. Again, this is a decision that you can, yeah, do basically however you like. Let me just undo this here and again play a bit with the offset. Yeah, it depends on how strong you want the effect to be. I think like this it looks nice, but of course you can choose a smaller pattern or a more intense one, however you like. You can also play here with the disperse, which means basically how irregular the effect is, but I think, yeah, like this it's already looking quite nice. Okay, one problem we have is that it's of course not red, so we do some color corrections and go to effects, color correction, levels. And in the levels effect, we go to the red channel and go here down. And now you can see that immediately these lines start turning red. And the more we move it down, the more red they become. They also become a little bit less visible. Yeah, I mean, if you want this more subtle style, you can leave it like this. Already looks already quite nice and quite impressive. The only thing that is not yet nice, so in my case I just want to have more contrast, so I want to make these lines a little bit more visible than that. But I like this red background actually, so what I therefore do is I do a copy of it. So I want to overlay this very not so contrasty version with a second one that makes the lines again a little bit more visible and is a little bit more darker. So I select both the red lines and the matte layer and duplicate them by clicking on the keyboard Control D, duplicate. Now I have a copy, and you can see immediately it got again more more visible. And on this copy, I also add another effect, namely curves effect, color correction curves. And with this, I want to increase the contrast. So I just make here more like an S shape. And maybe let's also oh, sorry. Actually, the effect's now on the wrong layer, so I delete it again. It's, of course, we do not need it on the matte, but here on this layer. So let's go in the levels effect first a little bit back with our red coloring, maybe like this. And now let's add another effect, color correction curves. Oh, now I'm irritated. Actually, I seem to have added the curves effect before to both layers. So of course we do not need to have two curves, but only here. And now we make here much more contrast here. Now you can see that, yeah, the second red lines layer, the original one, adds here this red background, and then the first one here adds again more contrast and more visibility to the lines. So you can basically play with this and change it however you like. So these levels and also the curves here can be adjusted to meet your needs. You can also say, for example, I do not want to be these lines actually that red, but the middle of it should rather be black or so. Then we can go back here to the red channel levels effect and change this here again. Yeah, now you can see that the wounds in general stay red, but these center points here rather become a little bit more black. And maybe you even want to have some more contrast here. Yeah, like this. You have here some dark spots, but not very visible. And yeah, here this is looking not so nice. So here I probably do not want to have this black. So the easiest thing I can do here is just extend our mask. I make the mask visible here and say, okay, so I move this here a bit up, of course, like this. And then the black parts disappear. So this is the look I find quite nice. So if we go to the main comp and look at the preview, yeah, this already looks quite interesting. And of course, this cell pattern you can adjust however you like. And the last thing I maybe would do here is some final color correction for the entire shot. For this I go to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, and for this adjustment layer I add again some curves effect, because this definitely lacks some contrast. So I just again make here some kind of S-shaped curve, like this. And okay, of course you can now continue fine-tuning all of this, but I am actually quite satisfied with this result, and I hope, yeah, you enjoyed this tutorial. My name is Matthias Möhl for mamoworld.com, and I hope that you also again join in for the next tutorials.